Hi all, Kyber1 here with review number 65, Ultimate Magic for Pathfinder First Edition role-playing game. Alright, so here we are. The themes here are expanding the the mystical side of Pathfinder with First Edition with a new class, the Magus, feats, spells, and a new spell system. Alright, looking good so far. This reminds me of the Tome of Magic for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition. Um, I don't really have a big complaint with this book. It's just my big concern is the fact that you have physical types and magical types, and this book only really revolves around the magical types. So it, it's amazing because these characters are locked kind of into their progression and skill system, but they have far more reaching and abilities than the other guys do. And I just I really hate to leave players out of options and decisions and you know when you're cold crafting, you're cold crafting. It's like cold brew. Not really. I don't know. My high praise though are the words of power section, designing spells section, binding outsiders, building and modifying constructs. Those are all rules that are in here. The key points though are the Magus class on 8 to 13, and then you have spellcasting class options on 14 to 89. And I want to kind of show you guys this section. 14. Okay. Alright, we have the Alchemist. Okay, I'm not going to do that for every page, but there's some things you should know. But this is very word intensive. Let's see. For the Alchemist, you have the Churgeon archetype, you have the Clone Master archetype, the Internal Alchemist archetype, the Mind Chemist archetype, Psychonaut archetype, Reanimator archetype, Vivisectionist archetype, and then you have the Bard. And Bards have a special kind of masterpiece skill. Um, and then for special character archetypes, you have the Animal Speaker archetype, Celebrity archetype, the Demagogue archetype, Dirge Bard archetype, Geisha archetype, Sound Striker archetype. Then you have the Cleric with variant channeling. You have the Cloistered Cleric archetype, the Separatist archetype, Theologian archetype, Undead Lord archetype, and then you have the Druid with animal and terrain domains now, including like the Arctic domain and the Cave domain. So you have more domains than that, but there's a lot. Then you have Vermin Companions. You have the Dragon Shaman archetype, the Minhir Savant archetype, Mooncaller archetype, Pack Lord archetype, Reincarnated Druid archetype, Saurian Shaman archetype, Shark Shaman archetype, Storm Druid archetype. Then you have your Inquisitor with different sort of inquisitions they can kind of choose from. On page 42, you have the Inquisitions table for Galarian deities. It's easier to do it this way because I don't have enough space on paper to write it, all the content in this book down. And there is a lot to go over, but there are a lot of Inquisitions. For the Inquisitor, you have the Exorcist archetype, you have the Heretic archetype, you have the Infiltrator archetype, you have the Preacher archetype, the Sin Eater archetype, then you have the Magus, which is the new core class in this book, with a Bladebound archetype, and they get something cool called the Black Blade. That's pretty cool. You get the Hexcrafter archetype, Spellblade archetype, Staff Magus archetype. Then you have the Monk, and monks take vows. And then you have the Qin Monk archetype. That's the only thing for monk. Oracle, they have mysteries, which are their special ability. You have the dual cursed Oracle archetype. You have the Enlightened Philosopher archetype. You have the Planner Oracle archetype, like the planes. Possessed Oracle archetype. The Seer archetype. Stargazer archetype. For the Paladin, you have the Oathbound Paladin archetype, and they take oaths as their special ability. So then you have the Ranger, and then Rangers get 10 different types of traps, and of course they get the Trapper archetype. Then you get the Sorcerer, and of course there's more Sorcerer Bloodlines, which is their special ability. Then you have the Cross-Blooded archetype, which means you have two distinct Sorcerer Bloodlines that are kind of merged together into a gestalt, if you will. Then you have the Wild-Blooded archetype, and those are pretty cool. There's quite a few options there. And then there's a Warped Bloodline, kind of table 1-4 on page 73. I don't know how well you're able to see that. But yeah, there's a plethora of options. This is kind of why I put off this book, because I just didn't know how to cover it, like, effectively. Then you have the Summoner, and they have their aquatic base form, I guess, available to Eidolons then. Eidolons, something. And then there's more evolution awesomeness, and then you have the Broodmaster archetype for Summoner, and then summoning horde rules, and then you have the Evolutionist archetype for Summoner, Master Summoner archetype, Synthesist archetype, and then the Witch, of course, has the hexes. And the Witch makes her way over from Advanced Player's Guide. You have standard hexes, major hexes, and grand hexes. And then you have Witch patron themes. And then you have the Beast Bonded archetype, Gravewalker archetype, Hedge Witch archetype, Sea Witch archetype. And then you have the Wizard with the Arcane Discoveries. And then you have this little section on the 5 elements. Okay. Scroll Master archetype for Wizard, and that's it for that. On 94 to 98, you have something called Spell Blights. On 99 to 100, you have Spell Duels. You have Binding Outsiders on 101 through 110. Building and Modifying Constructs on 111 through 116. New Familiars on 117 through 120. You have spell books on 121 through 127. You have the Designing Spell section on 128 through 139. Feats on 142 through 159. Words of Power on 162 through 193. And this section makes this book worth it. The Words of Power breaks down effects and ties them to word codes, if you will. And in doing so, it enables you to cast the effect you want by chaining concepts together. And I can't even go into how awesome this is because we're already at 12 minutes. But Words of Power, if you haven't picked this up, Ultimate Magic makes it worth it. And then you have spells on 196 through 249. So my pros for this are the new base class, the Magus. You have the Words of Power. You have thematic archetypes for all magic casting, not classing characters. And that anything in the core book, advanced player's guide, and this, like, amazing. Good job. I can't really think of any cons, just the cautionary tale of your fighters are going to feel a bit left out by this content. Do I recommend? Absolutely. The Words of Power, there's enough there, and with the designing spells and everything else, the Words of Power really enable you to allow players to customize their effectiveness. And it really brings the magic back, I feel, because players can surprise you with things they learn and know. And that's part of the fun, right? And yeah, so I absolutely recommend it, especially if you're running player characters with magic abilities. It's not super effective if you're not, but alright, Kyber 1 out.